Hey guys, my name's Melissa. I did not intend for the first video on this Yoga for Musicians channel to be about emotional regulation. I have learned through life experience, though, that it is the basis for everything. And I also feel a deep internal responsibility to pass this information along because of the weight of the circumstances that I was able to get through using yoga and meditation as tools. I've made this little diagram to organize how yoga and meditation helped me through all of this. Everything's timestamped below if you want to come back or skip around. Before we get to how yoga and meditation helped me, we have to establish a little context for what I was dealing with during all of this. Abuser 1, a family member. This family member used the family business to establish a scam business that she involved me in. It affected my taxes, it affected my income, it affected my finances in addition to my income, it affected my retirement, it affected my identity, it affected my mail, it affected every single family relationship I had, and I had no support system. This family member, I always knew something was a little off, but I had to see with my own eyes how far off it was. Abuser 2, my producer that groomed me for 20 years. I met him when I was a student in college. He was one of the professors for a live music ensemble, and I became a client of his at his studio. He established trust in the music making process and used that time to get to know me, to get to know my interests, to get to know what I did not like, and they use all this information later, like down the road, once they know that you're, I don't know, locked in. At the point of this occurring, I had already been on the healing journey for several years at this point, and cutting ties with people that just were too toxic for me, and I was not going back. So my circle became very small. I did notice some red flags from my producer, but for a few reasons, my brain was not able to process them. The severity was escalating with Abuser 1, and I wasn't able to look at anything that I was seeing. It was sort of like, no, this isn't happening, with Abuser 2. And also the timing, the way the timing worked out, Abuser 2, who had groomed me for 20 years, and I saw a consistent personality from Abuser 2, was still in the love bombing phase and the testing phase. So anything that sort of seemed a little weird was, I brushed off as no one's perfect, benefit of the doubt. And then Abuser 1 did pulled a little stunt that was the nail in the coffin as far as me communicating with them and the family. And Abuser 2 really started to do the switch up at that point once he knew that I didn't have a solid, any foundation. My producer tricked me into living in his commercial buildings. I didn't know that they were not registered for living. So at one point in time, both of my abusers had control of my mail for different reasons. He essentially tried to position himself as my creative handler. He made sure that I was not able to earn an income, while at the same time using my ideas and my templates as his own work. What else? Sexual assault. He was stealing and ruining my things, specifically anything audio related. He would use my sensory sensitivities, specifically to sound, as a weapon. There was one time in particular It was the worst time. He had a guitar session with an artist he was working with downstairs, and he turned the amp all the way up to 11, and I was paralyzed in the sound waves on the floor, unable to move, just bawling. And of course he had to come up and check his work so he could enjoy seeing me in pain on the floor. So the noise thing was used against me a lot, and that's just the way that I'm wired. That's just the way my brain worked. That was something that my response to it I was able to manage, but in the moment I was sort of at the mercy of the sound. And the whole time, your typical gaslighting, difficult to deal with type of everyday interactions. My brain had already been compromised, not only from a lifetime of abuse from this family member, abuser one, but I was in the thick of it already, entering, like I said, the worst part of this with them. My producer knew that I did not have a very stable family foundation, and he really utilized that to his advantage. The 100-year-old factory conditions upstairs, like they were the original floors and paint and everything. So there was decades of grease and dirt and grime, and in the summertime, the heat would cause all of that to smell nauseating, and I literally wouldn't be able to eat. I fell through the floor once, sliced my finger open. You might be asking, well, Melissa, why would you move in there in the first place? He was masterful at making others appear as the problem, and this was something that was supposed to be a construction project that never changed. So I had to endure the old factory building living conditions and the sensory sensitivity attacks and the abuse from abuser 2 for many, many extra months, while I had to learn about and reverse all of the legalities and the tax issues and everything that abuser 1 had wrapped me up in prior to abuser 2. And this was something that was supposed to be a construction project that never changed. So I had to endure these disgusting, awful, loud living conditions for extra months while I was learning about and reversing the legalities and the tax stuff and identity issues that abuser 1 had wrapped me up in already. Yoga and meditation did not make me immune to their abuse and their tactics. It quite literally offered me the mental space to make the decisions I needed to make clearly enough to save my life and get out of there. At that point, I had been practicing meditation for 4 years and yoga for 8. So I had established a good foundation. At the start, I was sitting for 30-minute stretches at a time, meditating daily, but 30 minutes was a normal thing that I was enjoying. And at the end, after I had moved out, I could not sit for 3 breaths. That's what his abuse and my family's abuse had done to my nervous system during those 2 years. 30 minutes to barely 3 breaths. Okay, I'd like to share several different examples for how I was able to use emotional regulation in different ways to manage my internal environment, manage externally what my abuser was perceiving me as experiencing, and how I transmuted all of this energy. The foundation for emotional regulation for me is daily movement and meditation. Movement and stillness every day no exceptions. I'm not rigid about when it happens or what I am doing. I fully and completely listen to my body and what the day is requiring of me. But that is self-care that I give to myself. Even when I don't want to do it, I'm always grateful that I did it. These practices are not about perfection. No 2 days are the same. It truly is about being in the moment and just showing up. No perfection, just consistency. Being able to show up even when you're feeling like crap is powerful. Emotional regulation, in essence, to me, in my own words, is finding the balance and learning the subtleties between knowing when and how to transmute, to move, to alchemize energy and emotion, and knowing when and how to allow them to be there. In both cases, this required me to allow all of the emotions to be there, and allowing the emotions to be in my experience made it easier to stay in my body and stay in the present moment. So in the moment, it was beneficial, and incrementally over time, it was beneficial because I could feel the progress I was making. I could feel my nervous system slowly healing, and you can't heal in the environment that is damaging you, but I felt progress. When you begin to see the person in front of you for who they really are, when their mask really starts to slip, and you can accept that they are doing these awful things to you, they will continue to do these awful things to you, and the cycle will continue as sure as the seasons will continue. And it is just their nature. It removes a layer of energy expenditure that you were previously doing when you were emotionally attached to the situation. It's sort of like if you complain about the weather, that's not going to change the weather. You complaining about the weather won't do something about the weather, in the same way that you holding rigidity in your body, you holding your breath, you saying, I don't want to experience this emotion, and pushing it away, whether you know it or not, is not going to change the emotion. There is an element of allowance that if you just acknowledge, hey, I'm feeling pretty heavy right now, and you allow that to be there, it makes it easier to breathe. And when you can free your breath up, you can start to free your body up and your mind up, and things just begin to move a little easier by allowing it to be there. Let's go back to the weather analogy. When you know the individual you're dealing with is a walking storm, you don't need to expend any extra energy in being upset that they are a walking storm. You can just get your boots and your umbrella and your rain jacket and arm yourself the best you can. I was shown slowly over time, and I asked to see the depths of what people were willing to do. And I was given the information as I could handle it. If I had seen all of this play out at the beginning of my journey in 2020, learning about narcissism, I don't think I would have handled it in the same way at all. I would have lost my acceptance of my reality and what my abusers were doing to me did not make their abuse any less painful. It made it easier to deal with inside of myself. My daily walks, yoga, meditations, that was the baseline recalibration, macro clean out. And then in the moment is when I worked on my next skill, communication skills. I saw greater development in my emotional regulation skills in working on communication skills. This is Jefferson Fisher. He's an attorney. He talks a lot about communication skills, emotional regulation, and high conflict situations. As I started to implement and practice Jefferson's advice, I felt with each interaction stronger and stronger and stronger. And that in itself was empowering and energetically cleansing and gave me energy to move forward. In dealing with abuser 2, I had to develop a sense for when to not give him anything at all, gray rock, or when to placate and give him the response I knew he was looking for. With both abusers, once I truly could look at the reality of the situation, it immediately offered me a sense of space between the emotions that they try to conjure up. And this allowed me to turn their game around on them. I used gray rocking at times to minimize my energy expenditure, minimize the information he was able to gain to be a better abuser in the future. And when you're interacting with this type of person, they're looking for your emotional response. I didn't give him one unless I chose to give him one. I didn't bring up anything that I noticed. I just let it go. I played dumb. I let him get comfortable and I let him be himself. And because he was comfortable, things escalated fairly quickly until I put a camera on my stuff and he opened my phone and saw the security camera app, and then he stopped stealing and ruining my things. Playing dumb essentially allowed me to hide in plain sight. It took a tremendous amount of energy to hold my position and ignore. I had to alchemize that. I had to alchemize the anger, the exhaustion, and I channeled it all into packing my things. Every time he did something to make me upset or angry, I packed more of my stuff. In addition to playing dumb and allowing manipulators to comfortably escalate their games, I started to feel, well, I call this acting for the purpose of the conversation, but I would start to feel the emotion come up that abuser 2 was trying to bring up in me. And because I knew it was happening and I was detached from it, I would just allow everything to play out. He's getting what he wants, and I can go back to work after that because I'm detached at that point, and just it's so much less energetically draining. Everybody wins. I'd like to finish off with a story about something that happened recently, even after I left both abusers. No contact. Some details that were strange about vehicles near where I'm staying made me a bit uneasy. And I watched these vehicles for a couple weeks. I didn't really think anything of it until one evening I saw some strange activity in a business parking lot at night. So the next day I put a call into the police because of my situation. I was a little bit nervous that one of my abusers was perhaps following me. Well, it ended up being nothing. All of the details just were weird, and they happened to be. And I walked away from that situation very proud of myself because I could have lost my shit, but I didn't. this has really been more training. The practice of yoga showed me in my body that, as someone who came from a bodybuilding background, CrossFit, pushing, grinding, repping it out, that I got greater results from pulling back a bit and being more observational and more intentional with my energy. And that's how I had to approach leaving and getting out of this situation, with intention, with focus, with patience. And I could start to take responsibility for it and pour into myself. And I could seek comfort in why I had made the choices I had in the past, because I normalized a very toxic upbringing, and that's all I knew. So, although my situation was not peaceful, there was a moment of awakening where I was completely at peace with where I was at and why it was happening. When I had no more questions about my life and no more fear about the future. I'll always keep learning, but this lesson felt done. There are many ways to practice yoga. It's sort of like genres of music. They're the same notes arranged in a different way, a different style in different genres. If you've tried a class before and you felt like it wasn't really for you, maybe you weren't in the right class that fits your personality. Here's a video. It's a brief overview of some of the more popular styles of yoga that you might find in most studios, and some examples, visual examples, and who may or may not like this class style as a beginner. Now, I don't want to hear any of these excuses about, I can't do yoga because I'm not flexible enough. We don't think like that around here, okay? We're going to do yoga because it feels good to do yoga. And because we do yoga over time, we're going to be flexible and more flexible and more flexible. All right? Meditation, same thing. Oh, my mind is so crazy, I can't sit and meditate. That's why we sit and meditate. That's totally normal. Hey, if your mind's crazy, you're normal. You're normal. The key is to allow all the crazy things to go around in your head and allow them to be there. Don't like, don't subscribe. Go move your body. If you have a special occasion coming up for a child in your life, please consider buying my first children's book, Gunner Saves the Day, a rhyming storybook for kids about being different.